I'd love to hear your thoughts on this one also. I mean, this isn't just a bit of paperwork in Parliament. It's a question of whether public land is being traded away without the safeguards that protect us all. The taxpayer is the owner of this land, of course, and if the proper process isn't being followed, is this something we should be concerned about? Let's put the question to Bec Thomas, the independent MLC for Elwick, who has been on her feet this afternoon raising these issues in the upper house. Bec, good afternoon.
Leon, I think
good afternoon, David and Shelley
is that the
Bec,
people
your
of
concerns
Tasmania
broadly. You heard that
want a
the
diverse
Auditor
range
General,
of
Martin
views
Thompson, said there are serious concerns here about how this deal has been managed. What are yours?
Oh, look, the findings of the Auditor General's investigation are deeply concerning, David, and this is an issue that I've been concerned about for some time now. In fact, following the government's announcement in February this year that it had agreed to sell the land to LK Group, I raised concerns as a member of the Public Accounts Committee, and the committee subsequently commenced a targeted inquiry, and the response to that committee's inquiry can be accessed via the PAC website. But further, I was pleased to learn that the Audit Office was conducting an investigation, and certainly not only does the report validate the concerns I raised, but it heightens them given the uncertainty still surrounding the future of the proposed sale. We're still unclear about how the government intends to proceed from here in light of these findings, and I asked some questions of the Minister for Parks, who is responsible for Crown Lands, in question time in the Legislative Council this afternoon, and then put my concerns on the record on adjournment, because I fear that a deal could be done any day. We just don't know where things are at. There's a complete lack of transparency and openness from this government about whether there is even a draft sale agreement in existence. And given the Auditor General's access to cabinet documents was restricted, I have real concern about where to from here with this deal.
Does this all just look a little too friendly, a little too cosy, Bec Thomas? Is that what you're suggesting?
Oh, well, look, I think, when the Auditor General finds that there's no business case to support the implementation of the sale proposal, that the assessment of the proposal against the unsolicited proposals assessment criteria was inadequate, that the Coordinator General, who is responsible for receiving unsolicited proposals and coordinating the assessment process, wasn't even involved, that conflicts of interest were not well managed, that the fact that the valuation report was shared with the proponent against the Valuer General's advice that doing so is a potential misuse of information raises serious concerns for Tasmanians, and Tasmanians simply deserve better than this when it comes to transparency and accountability and proper process, David. And we all know this isn't the first example of a bad deal being negotiated by this government without proper advice. Before it proceeds any further, it remains incumbent on the government to fully explain to Tasmanians whether the proposed deal actually can legally proceed, given the process failures that have been found in the Auditor General's investigation.
Bec Thomas is my guest, independent MLC for Elwick. And we're talking about the deal to sell land at Wilkinsons Point to Larry Kestelman, or Larry Kestelman's company. Of course, the businessman behind the Jack Jumpers. And the plan was announced in February, $500 million for a pretty impressive sounding sort of precinct with hotels, shops, a resort. Think South Bank down on the waterfront in Melbourne. The idea was to link that MyState Arena through to Mona. It would really... It's fair to say, Bec Thomas, a project like this would turbocharge. It would really revitalise the northern suburbs economy. I mean, are you supportive of this idea in principle? Certainly Sue Hickey, as Mayor, was part of that announcement in February. She was quite enthusiastic about it.
Yeah, look, absolutely. And obviously, as former Mayor of Glenorchy, I was involved in initial discussions with LK Group about what a master plan for that site could look like. Excuse me, I certainly welcome the government recognising the significant potential of Wilkinsons Point as an area that really is ripe for development. It's a really valuable area in the city of Glenorchy, and I recognise the benefits that development of this area could deliver. But Tasmanians can rightly expect the government to engage with proponents and the community as well in a legitimate and transparent way to make sure we realise the utmost benefits for Glenorchy and Greater Hobart and Tasmanians more broadly in selling and developing land at Wilkinsons Point, and any land really. And look, if it's in everyone's best interest, it's in the proponent's best interest as well to demonstrate that proper process is followed in disposing of what is taxpayer-owned land.
All right, Bec Thomas, pay rise has gone through today, and as I understand it, you were one of the upper house members who didn't vote for the disallowance motion to block that pay rise, meaning you will also get a 22% pay rise. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask how much more will be in your pay packet next week.
Oh, look, I don't know. I can't say I've done the calculation, David, but I think, it's quite clear on the public record and that the increase is at approximately $30,000. But what I will say is I was just extremely disappointed that the Parliament was put in this position by the Premier, that we had an independent umpire in the Tasmanian Industrial Commission make a determination about what is a fair and reasonable salary for members of Parliament in 2025 to receive. And the way it's being misconstrued by the Premier as a 22% pay rise compared to public sector workers who, are being offered 3% is totally inaccurate and unreasonable, because in fact, over the 7 years that members of Parliament have not received a pay rise, it equates to a rise of 2.9% roughly annually. And, that's equivalent to public sector workers, what the increases they've received over the last 7 years. And, I've only been here in Parliament for a relatively short time, but for my longer serving colleagues, that has a significant impact of, who turns up to work every day for 7 years earning the same as what they earned 7 years ago, and not a red cent more. It's, it's really not, in any other sector, it wouldn't be acceptable that there were no pay increases. So I think, taking the populist knee-jerk approach and representing something as 22% without explaining the broader context is really unfortunate and really disappointing from our leader, and to put his parliamentary colleagues in the position of having to debate this today and having to put aside other business, that actually impacts the lives of Tasmanians to spend time on this when we had a determination from the independent umpire is extremely disappointing. Playing politics with people's livelihoods is just not right, and there's no need for it. So I hope the government now will look at urgent reform so that parliamentarians are never in this position again.
Mm. All right. Well, Bec Thomas, we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thanks, David.
Bec Thomas there, the independent MLC for Elwick, who stepped out of the upper house chamber to discuss her pay rise, her 22% pay rise, and of course the issue of the waterfront land down at Wilkinsons Point. So that's where the Deck, the Derwent Entertainment Centre, or the MyState Bank Arena, depending on how you refer to it, that area is slated for a major commercial makeover worth about $500 million, backed by Larry Kestelman. The government has promised to sell him the land, but the process behind it might be, a little whiffy, at least according to Martin Thompson.